BJYM Policy Dialogues. In a nutshell, this is going to be a platform wherein we are going to discuss with the key policy makers on some of the nuances of the policy making, how the policy is made, how the policy is implemented, and we are going to be interacting with some of the key policy makers on what really goes behind into the overall policy dynamics.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we're beginning the fireside chat. Tejaswiji, over to you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this new initiative of the Bharatiya Janata Yuva Morcha, the BJYM Dialogues. Following the guidance and the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, the Yuva Morcha is making efforts to transition from a young political body, the youth wing of a political party primarily in opposition, to a political youth wing of a political party which is today the mainstay in India's governance. The objective of having programs and initiatives like the BJYM magazine, the BJYM Sushasan Yatra, the BJYM Policy Dialogues, is to expose our young political activists to the good practices and nuances of policy making and good governance that the country is witnessing under the dynamic leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister. The other objective is to also equip our young Karyakartas with the necessary skill set that is required to lead and guide the country as young political activists of 21st century Bharat. In that sense, this BJYM Policy Dialogues marks one of the very first and new initiative of the BJYM, which we hope will be replicated by state units all across the country, where our state presidents and state and district Karyakartas will also meet with policy makers at the state and the district levels and learn about the nuances of policy, the challenges of implementing policy, and the great impact which we are witnessing on the ground, which is literally transforming the lives of 1 billion Indians. Today, it gives us great joy, and it is an honor for the organization that we have with us a woman who has made history as the first full-time defense minister, first full-time finance minister, and inarguably one of the most successful finance ministers in Indian history, under whose stewardship and leadership, India has made a great journey from being a fragile 5 economy to being one of the most fastest growing large economies in the world. It is a matter of great pride and honor that Smt Nirmala Sitharaman ji has agreed to inaugurate the series of BJYM Policy Dialogues on behalf of all of you and on behalf of the lakhs and lakhs of Yuva Morcha Karyakartas all across the country. I extend Madam Nirmala Sitharaman ji a very, very warm welcome to this discussion. Thank you so much, Madam. In the last 7 years, undoubtedly, the size of the country's economy has increased. We are one of the fastest growing economies in the world. There is a silent but a significant entrepreneurial revolution that is taking place in the country. Those who were hitherto unfunded, unbanked have now become a part of the formal banking system. And even during a most testing COVID pandemic, India has finally emerged out as a green spot in the global economy. And you, Madam, have been at the forefront of spearheading many of these transformations in the country's economy. What we would like to know are what are the 5 fundamental changes that Indian economy has witnessed pre-Modi and post-Modi. How has the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi fully irreversibly and significantly transformed the country's economy?
See, if I answer this, you actually get Modinomics. The 5 things that Tejasvi asked me about since 14 compared to what earlier did not happen. And that is the characteristic feature of the management of the economy under Prime Minister Modi's leadership. And it stood by us even during a pandemic. It stood by us after the pandemic, even as we are coming out of it, because the world notices us for it. Our own opposition within this country can say, oh no, you said 9.2, but it has now come to 9.1. Today RBI has said 7. These are all nitpicking details, you know. But the large message is now everywhere. People are recognizing it. And that coming out of the pandemic. Whereas pre-14, what was it? A good economy given post-Vajpayeeji's government, giste became a fragile 5. So the compare and contrast is on these grounds, and therefore my 5. Modi ji believes that India needs transformational changes. And for those transformational changes, several factors will have to be brought together in governance, and that is why governance per se takes the lead in everything that PM does. The first of the, I'll simultaneously bring in those, let's say, slogans. Minimum government, maximum governance. We said that. So I'll use that one slogan here. I'll use the other ones so that you get the consistent picture. So transformational change. Why? Since the last 70 years, under the, centrally decided command controlled socialist Raj, about which Tejasvi spoke during the budget session, the first half of it. We've only seen little by little changes, marginal changes, incremental changes. And in 70 years, it's not made any substantial change to the profile of India. We are moving, and some people even made fun of India's growth rate and said, Hindu growth rate, yaar, itna hi chalega gaadi. Even in that, they mocked you. Your growth rate can be comparable with even Russia or any large economy even at that time. But still, yours is Hindu growth rate. Because ये धीरे चलने वाली हाथी है, it can't दौड़ना इसका काम नहीं है. But that incremental change has not delivered, therefore. Not delivered in what sense? You still didn't have electricity in some villages, you still didn't have Shauchalaya in some villages, you still didn't have basic amenities reaching in some villages. So the basic indicators of a common citizen of India's life is what I'm talking about. So he believes in transformational change. Second, disruption is something he's ready for. Whether it is looking at the way in which the large companies are working, the public sector companies are working, efficiency levels, all of which are looking at a model where you put in huge money from the government, not run it professionally or run it professionally, but still not be accountable for the generation of revenue or making of profit and so on. The point that now Tejasvi referred to, India has always been an entrepreneurial country. Small, medium, big, nano. People did do their own business, kept their families, incomes were earned, profits were made, and that is why when you make profit, in our scheme of things, it's never seen as loot. Whereas a communist would say if you earn profit, it is sinful, it is wrong. Whereas if you look at our own Purusharth, you start with Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. The two framing bookends are Dharma and Moksha. Why are they the bookends? And drawn from this philosophy is only where you had ashramas. In the sense, you were a grihastha or you were in vanaprastha. Every individual's life was led with each age contributing to the dharma one end, moksha the other end. How does that work? You thought of a child leading to his teenage as a student. You acquired knowledge. That knowledge would also teach you to fight as a Kshatriya. That knowledge would also teach you to keep doing certain ritual and also certain basic duty with lokakshema. You worked for the benefit of all. Or it could also be when you got into your adulthood, you started doing the business, which is your varnashrama dharma. You would be a trader, you would be a soldier, you would be anything. But within all this, the bookends are dharma in one end, moksha on the other end. What is that? You have to do everything beginning with dharma. Your code will have to be dharmic. You will never do undharmic work. So then you started saying dharma, artha. What is artha? Earn your living, earn money, earn your profit. It was never unacceptable to Indians. As a grihastha, you had your resources to support the king, pay your taxes, support the rishis and munis. So even today you would support certain charitable activities. So it was always acceptable that you made your money, you earned your money, and therefore in India, we've never had this tradition of looking down upon people who earned their legal, legitimate money, profit. So entrepreneurship was essentially the spirit which we, within the frame of dharma and moksha, accepted. Whereas through the various different ages, all this has been eroded, totally eroded. There are enough data to show how in the Middle Ages, till about the 16th century, we were the maximum revenue generating economies, which had gone bad. Okay. Now, coming very quickly, therefore, to be sure that the Indian economy supports entrepreneurs, policies of this government have been framed. And what did we do the second? The second was, in order to become disruptive, in order to take disruptive steps to revive the economy, what did we do? First of all, we said, look, this country will not be corruption ridden. Everything will be transparent. Whoever wants to do business, do fair and square, earn your profit. We are quite okay with it. We welcome people to come and invest money here. Not just people from outside. Even for our own people, we said ease of doing business. We'll do the regulations, completely review it and remove all the excesses which are there. Too many controls. We'll remove all that and make it easy for you to do your business. And also, one of the early things in 2014, you would remember Prime Minister Modi saying, this country will not be red tape country, it will be a red carpet country. Now for all this, I bring in the second slogan. What did he say? Why do we want this entrepreneurial skill? Why do we want to support people to earn their money? Sabka saath, sabka vikas. We need everyone to grow. We'll help them. We'll be with them. Sabka saath, sabka vikas. And vikas is what? Your development. Not just you having the power to make your own money, but for that you need education, but for that you need good health. So literally from 2014, the schemes under maximum governance, minimum government, and also Sabka Saath were, look at it, it's important for us to understand the sequence. Bring in financial inclusion, make everybody have an access to banking facility. And related to that was support entrepreneurs through startups. And not just metropolitan startups, but also go to the villages and at the block level, give stand-up. Associate yourself with smaller entrepreneurs who are in the district levels. Stand-up, startup, we're both to support entrepreneurs. Now in this Sabka Saath, we have to make sure that we don't ignore those communities which have been disadvantaged over the years. So as we extended stand-up, we made sure SCs were brought in it, STs were brought in it, women were brought in it, and at their own areas. Okay, financial inclusion, Jan Dhan Yojana, this startup and stand-up for entrepreneurial support, remove red tape, make it easy to do business. All this happened simultaneously. And while doing all this, we didn't forget the welfare angle. So first of all, when I said transformation, digital disruption, and for disruption, for making sure that we are not progressing only in transformational bits, meaning marginal increases, but transformational changes will have to happen. So disruptive technologies were brought in. Now if you want to have disruption in the economy, shake it all up and make sure the spirit of entrepreneurship will come out, you need to give support in every way. In order that the economy will become cleaner, no corruption, you need to have transparent way of doing things. So adopt technology, the third. Adopt technology so that everything that you do is put digitally there. You call for a tender, I'm not calling my Jija. You have some land to be ready for an industry, I'm not calling my crony capitalist. It's all available for everybody to see. Everything that the government does is on a technology-driven platform. Now, also in this mode, many villages did not have banks. Many hamlets did not have people going to an ATM. So all these are not only for the urban areas. Technology adoption, using optical fiber, taking internet to every panchayat level, all this happened because simultaneously, as you say, I adopt technology, you can't just say I adopt technology, I'm getting it in Lutyens, Delhi, I don't care about any other place. No, it has to go to every panchayat. So Bharat Net was adopted. They were made to go to every panchayat with the optical fibers and make sure that internet facility is available everywhere. And that is why the data center thing has also been brought in. So if I want to adopt technology, Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas will have to be enabled through that technology. So it has to be available for everybody. Democratize the technology for everybody to use. The way in which payment portal has been built. At one point in time, within 3 years ago, we all thought, okay, move from checks to cards. But PM Modi was very clear, zamana itna tezi se badal rahi hai, check se card is not the story. There are many other ways in which using your phone, you can do your banking. So QR was thought about even 3 years ago. UPI, NCPI was made to experiment with it. Today, even card is outdated, probably even QR is outdated. It's moving faster, phone to phone. BEAM was tried out because of that. Otherwise, imagine during the pandemic, payments wouldn't happen. You and me couldn't go out, can't draw money to pay. Even the currency note, some people were using a steam press to disinfect it or spraying it with your whatever, which we have to sanitizer. So in that era, without you touching currency, you were able to do your payment and receive your payments. So did I say 3? The first one being transformational change. He doesn't believe in
Marginal change.
Marginal or incremental changes. The second, disruptive changes, he was ready and he showed majorly disruptive changes. And third, if those two, transformational and disruptive, will have to happen, you need technology. Technology in every aspect. Today, technology, sitting in finance ministry, I can tell you, the efficiency in collection of revenue, the rate at which we've improved on every month's collection, are not simply because the officers are efficient and they are making sure everybody pays their taxes, but also because you're plugging loopholes. There are a lot of jugaad happening in the ground. People, trying to see how best they can avoid a tax or evade a tax or, get refunds where they are not supposed to get refunds. All that is getting plugged because today we have a system which has the strength of technology. We are able to use artificial intelligence. We are able to see where the money comes, where it goes, and at every point of entry and exit, we are able to see this is the person who's done it. That's the company which has done it. That's the exporter who's taken it. This is the importer who's doing it. This is where this man is, And they are able to follow the trail and plug the loophole. So this technology adoption is not just for payment, it's not just for assessment, it's also for containing wrongdoing. So efficiency is improved. And no one can say, you're coming and hitting at me because you have a personal vengeance. It's all open up there. The data shows where you've taken it. The data shows where you've gone and spent it. The data shows somebody who's received it from you is a non-existing individual. So transparency gives you that advantage. So Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, minimum government, maximum governance are all getting different platforms through which it is shown that these are not just slogans, they are actually being shown in the ground. Fourth, don't miss that India is a country which has always taken care of its poor. You'll have everybody telling you, oh, Indians are not charitable in their mindset. Because suddenly we hear of somebody, Warren Buffett, or, Google somebody, or a Facebook Sandberg, or somebody creating huge trust. In India, people do charitable work, but they may not be showing it at all out. But still, the message is, we've never forgotten to take care of our own, poor, weak, and so on. That continues even with our own BJP Jan Sangh philosophy. Antyodaya is what? Antyodaya is actually making sure that the person who's on the bottommost rung gets help. That has never been forgotten. PM Modi from the beginning, अरे ये सब ठीक है, जो नागरिक है, who doesn't otherwise understand your, jargon-ridden language, उनके लिए कैसे बताओगे? क्या है? इससे उनका क्या मिलने वाले? That's been the test of every one of the schemes or projects or policy that the government is making. So Antyodaya, fourth. Okay? And fifth, the strength of India lies in the way in which we have built relationship with everybody around us. The neighborhood first, Indian Ocean related countries next. Further, whether it's the US, whether it's the Russian Republic, whether it's Japan, whether it is China, with all of them we have, during his tenure, much before COVID, you would have seen him meeting and disclosing, talking to people, exchanging ideas with them. So your economy, Modinomics, if I can, since you asked me 5, I'm giving you 5 of those critical things with which today I can list out those the schemes which have been planned, talking about every region in this country, everybody, PM Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, Ujjwala Yojana, Jandan, Swanidhi, all these reflect the concern for the poor and needy. They are never forgotten. The entrepreneur, or the poor are all equally taken care of. So 5, there are more, but in concise form, if you want to capture what Modinomics is.
Thank you, ma'am. I think let's open the floor for questions. I'm sure many of you are excited at this opportunity to ask the nation's finance minister some questions. So let's start from the right side, of course. So anybody on this side? Yes, Madhukeshwarji.
Good evening, ma'am. My name is Madhukeshwar Desai. I'm the All India Vice President for the BJP Youth League. Ma'am, I have 2 questions, really. The first one is, I was very intrigued by what you said, of course, that you're learning on the job all the time.
Yes.
Learning on the job, for example, as a lawyer or any other profession that others may have over here. For the lazy people in us, you can YouTube it. For everyone else, you can read about it. You can go to a library. There's historical context to it. But in terms of policy making, who would you look at, or what would you look at? Is it notes from former ministers that you would look at on files? Is it conversation with bureaucrats that you would speak with who have been in ministries before? I was very curious to understand what that process was to actually get to learning.
Talking to previous ministers, if you have the access to them, but not all of them, because sometimes when it is politically divided, you can't really talk. But there are, if you have the advantage of ministers who have been in our school of thought itself, earlier ministers, but sometimes that's very limiting, because that can relate to the period in which they were, and whether that would be applicable even now. You should have the readiness to be able to limit it to the context in which you would do the consultation, and not expand it for being relevant all over again and again, because periods change, times change, situations change. So you may benefit from that experience, but necessarily not copy paste it. Similarly, yes, files, yes, also publications which have come out on the topic, but more importantly, talk to the stakeholders. They would have 1,000 things to tell you. You will have the job then of your day to take that to fit it into the current context of governance. Can that be fitted into it? And in fitting it, you shouldn't neglect some of the most important suggestions, but yet can't accommodate everything. So that's the policy making trick, where stakeholder, previous experiences, but all that into today's framework. Because many of the things, for instance, if you were to take the inputs that you get from stakeholders, in 1975 India, they may fit, many of them, but in today's India, they may not fit. Equally, in 75 they wouldn't have fitted, but today they may fit. So you have to keep all that. The trick of policy making, therefore, is to make it possible to accommodate maximum inputs without compromising on today's context.
Thank you, ma'am. Sorry, the second part to my question. One comment, I hope you would answer that, is would you consider writing a book about your journey in learning about policy making so it would help others going forward?
I've not thought about it. Now that you're saying, Madhukesh, now that you're saying, let's see.
My last question, it's a very quick one, ma'am, is the budget, of course, captures more mind space than anything else in the Indian context. From beggar to billionaire, everyone is watching you on that one day. What's the thought process when you're deliberating on it, and of course when you're in Parliament speaking as well? If you could give us some insight on that.
The thought process will keep changing, because when you're making it, when you're preparing the budget, you're preparing it keeping in mind who it's going to do good. Will it have a maximum, good for that set of people or not, and all that. But when you're delivering it, it's much more monotonous. That you have to deliver it properly, that it doesn't go wrong in any way. You don't miss a line, you don't miss a paragraph, or, and I also have done it for the first time in last year's budget, completely digital. So you have all those small daytime, day-to-day concerns. The profound concerns are when you're making it.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Anybody else? Abhinavji.
Thank you, ma'am. Abhinav Prakash here, National Vice President, BJYM. Ma'am, I would like to ask you, how is the Atmanirbhar Bharat of Prime Minister Modi? This policy is different from the import, substitution, industrialization of the Nehruvian era. And how can India move up the value chain in the production process? We are, as of now, more into end assembly products, but how can we move into part and component trades and integrate into global supply chains? Thank you.
Yes, it's not an import substitution policy. Atmanirbhar Bharat is more to be sure that even as you're part of the global value chains, you would still tap all the energies that you have, the strengths that you have, to be able to produce as much as you can in every sector, so that you don't have to depend on something imported which you can yourself produce. Equally, that doesn't stop us from importing, because there are certain raw materials you don't have in this country. There are certain components which you don't manufacture and you don't think you can manufacture in the near future. So you will still be importing. So your Atmanirbhar Bharat is more to build on your strengths, make sure you maximize on your capacities, but at the same time not to negate those essential imports. And you see how it's coming off help now. Particularly when you're coming out of a pandemic, if you had only continuously depended on sources which are at difficulty now, you would be really in a spot. Even one example that I can take is on the India's dependence on edible oil. We used to import sunflower oil from Ukraine. As soon as this started happening, we have started making all the efforts to make sure that we are able to get it from elsewhere as well. So quick thinking, support and guidance from the Prime Minister to make sure that we are nimble-footed in this whole exercise. Get things immediately so that people don't suffer. Help us, but at the same time tell us why Atmanirbhar is important. If only we can produce our own as much as we consume and be able to produce a surplus, like with the way we produce wheat now, and we are able to find markets. Tea, as much as one or two countries couldn't make it to the market, we are able to sell tea now in newer markets which we didn't export to earlier.
Hello, ma'am. My name is Ashish Dave. I'm CEO of Mira Asset Venture Investments. We are venture investments, so we invest in most of the tech companies like Ola, Zomato, Big Basket. My question is, a couple of days back, you made a point in the parliament that when someone said that FIIs are dumping Indian stocks, and you said the retail investors have come and they cushion. So I was looking at the numbers. In Jan 2021, 8,000 crores worth of SIP flows have cushioned the market, which today is around 12,000 crores. And we know that, 10 years back, when FIIs would sell, the markets would crash. That happened in public markets. But today, beyond the public markets, there is Atmanirbhar capital, which is retail capital that has come. Similar steps need to be taken on the private investment side as well, because currently most of the investment that come from the funds, they happen to be global capital. Not that I'm averse to global capital, because I myself am from Korean capital. But how do we make more of the Indian corporates, pension funds, all of them participate in the private market journey as well? And what are the steps we should take on the private market investment from there to ensure that is Atmanirbhar capital available for funds? Thank you.
I think it depends on the decisions which industries make for themselves. Enough demand in the market, incentive to expand capacities, therefore bring in more investment, their own investment or equity from fund managers and so on. So they are a set of chain, one after the other steps to be meaning they fall in place as they take a call. The one thing which government did, and I think that would have a positive impact, and I can see it having positive impact, is that in 2019 we reduced the corporate tax. Reduced it to be probably the world's one of the lowest, and that's made a lot of difference. Now, even now, I find industry ready to come in already showing increase in capacities. Otherwise, having reduced the tax, my tax collection on corporate tax is increased, which means there is definitely more activity than before. Because if I was collecting 25 and at the rate of 25 and I earned certain amount, now I brought that 25 to 15 and I'm earning more. So capacities are increasing, investment is happening of Indian investors. It can be better. I agree.
Ma'am, just to build on to the observation that was made, that the retail participation in Indian markets have tremendously increased, especially post-pandemic. We also see, I'm sure most of you may also have encountered in your YouTube suggestions, we see a lot of young people, young influencers today who are making podcasts, videos, encouraging and educating people in investing in financial markets, etc. One thing that I have observed, ma'am, this can also be one suggestion that, maybe I was in fact also thinking that I should speak about this in the parliament, is that in our school and college curriculum, financial education is absolutely missing. And especially, people who come from middle class backgrounds, once they get their jobs, almost 4, 5, 6 years into it, then they realize that, hey, had I done an SIP from the very first day of my salary, things would have been much more better. It would have helped me buy that house before I got married or things like this. This is the first observation, ma'am, that if possible, to benefit young India, because we are truly now entering into a bullish market. The next 20, 30 years is going to be a great a period where young India can invest in our financial markets and make money. I think it is imperative for us to consider including financial education, at least in the last year before they exit college and enter the job market.
You're 100% right, and I agree with you. Financial education has never been a thing in this country. Those who had families which can advise them about how to handle money were better off. But the more and more nuclear the families are becoming, that advantage is lost out. And also the kind of money that our young can handle today, rightly earning, no one grudges that, but they handle big money also. Even that tells them about the risks which are entailed in each of them. So yes, financial education, school onwards, they should be. And I think there are agencies which are now realizing that, because investor education camps are being held, but it should also be a part of the curriculum. I agree.
Will you kindly take this
I'll take it up. I'll take it up.
Thank you. This is one thing that BJYM can claim credit for. Ma'am, also, while we are here, I will get back. Ma'am, when as a person who wants to choose, say, insurance products or financial products, there are so many in the market, and many a times choice results in confusion, especially when it comes to choosing insurance products for people, say, who now are there in their 50s, etc. Can we think of bringing in certain baskets of products which would make people less confused? And can this be done through our regulators? Because with so many digital insurance companies and fintech companies and digital banks, payment banks, all of them making their way, which is a good thing because the customer now has so many things to choose from. But at the same time, choice must not result in confusion. So can something, is the government thinking something?
But who indeed will have to do it is the pertinent question here, because the regulator, as you suggest, may not be the right person. Because the moment a regulator even remotely says, I want to put this on the table, it gives the feeling that the regulators approved it. Of course, the approval of the regulator is taken before launching some of the products, but it shouldn't look as if he's promoting one and at the cost of. So yes, point taken. We'll have to see how best we can work on it.
Yes. Kapilji finish. We'll come back.
Good evening, ma'am. My name is Kapil Parmar. I am National Head of Social Media for BJYM. If I'm not wrong, there were four major focal points of the budget this year, and first being the Gati Shakti. We are building, I think, 25,000 kilometers of highway that is like disruption in a way. So if you could please elaborate.
Gati Shakti is the overarching umbrella where the synergy between each one of those infrastructure will be brought together so that we can maximize on it. Maximize deriving the benefits from it. So if you were to look at the extreme case, you had a time when one small railway station would be built, but around it you wouldn't have a bus stand, you wouldn't have a taxi stand. What was the purpose with which that railway station was built? Does it link to a port? From there the train goes to an airport or a seaport? Or does it go to the nearest industrial cluster? So with the unthinking of the holistic benefit that one particular investment can bring in, a lot of such things have happened to this country. Whereas if you were to look at it from a holistic point of view, you would then understand that by building that railway station there, that product which is linked to that station can also be marketed. Does that give that link? Does the train come in time? Suppose that area produces fresh vegetables. Does the train come at the time to take that vegetable basket and go to the next metropolitan where it will be used? Or does the train come at a time when the vegetables are almost, wilting and not full of it, and probably doesn't even connect to the next Bada Abadi, and it goes to another place which probably doesn't. So these kind of things are all kept in mind when you're talking about Gati Shakti. Get the Gati through each one of these so that India can move rapidly forward.
Does it work? Thank you so much, ma'am, for giving us your valuable time. I thank Adhikshi for giving us this opportunity. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and thank you for that. I come from a state of West Bengal, and we know what a royal mess it is, especially in finance. Virtually, the state government is on the brink of a collapse, which might affect long term or a short term the citizen of that state. It's not known to a lot of people outside the state, but it is actually in a very bad shape. You must be aware of it. So what do you want to say upon that? And if you want to comment that the state is doing one which is known to everybody, whatever central government schemes, whatever money you provide to the states, they rename the schemes and try to distribute that money in a different name, and they divert the funds.
Under Prime Minister Modi, there is no way any one state is going to be left languishing. Because he makes it very clear to say, look, India has to develop fast. Even if one state is suffering and it's left to be where it is, the speed with which you want to develop the country is going to be pulled back. So there are several times he said all states should be given equal attention. You want to pull every state forward and so on. So every state gets due attention. Now about projects which are central central government schemes, many states I've heard people tell me that the local name is given, locally it is translated into meaning as though it is state government's own projects. Strictly speaking, all of us are doing it now, speaking about it, saying the Parliament of India approves a scheme with its name intact. The money is given to that scheme for that name together with going down as a central government scheme. No state can change the name. And if it does, we are all expected to go and say, no, sorry, Parliament has approved only this, this is what it should be. So that is the way we want to handle it because it has a legislative backing. There are of course schemes where center puts some money, state puts some money, that's a different story, but completely done by the central government. It should carry the name of that which has been approved in the central government.
Varun?
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing a lot of your thoughts. My name is Varun Javeri. I'm the National In Charge for Policy and Research at BJYM. Ma'am, my question pertains to the fact that one of the big focus of the government has been how to improve opportunities for employment, especially youth-based employment. So the question is that, what is like the roadmap looking right now in terms of, increasing the number of jobs as well as the employment opportunities which are available, especially for youth. At the same time, ma'am, if you can probably comment on what are some of the things that we are planning to do in terms of controlling the rising prices of some of the commodities that we see right now. Thank you.
What did we talk right at the beginning of this conversation? India is an entrepreneurial country. We have people wanting to do things and all that. We want to strengthen the ecosystem through which people are ready to do their own, for which banks are ready to give you help. There are a lot of government-owned schemes which tell you what to do, how to do. And there are agencies like the NABARD which create capacities within the tier 2, tier 3 or even completely rural areas. They create common facilities. Like for instance, like the one district, one product, which Prime Minister Modi has very clearly pushed forward, and also where he speaks about vocal for local, local becoming global. These are all those, again, slogans which you may happily take on board, because the capacity in the rural area for that particular product which is unique to it are being created, not just for producing more of that unique product, but for storing it, for value adding to it, for exporting it, for creating capacities which are necessary to give, let's say, additional inputs to it, for bringing the raw material closer to it. Each one has opportunities for jobs. Each one has opportunities for certain skills. So the focus of the government is to provide those opportunities for skilling and for creating those additional common capacities which are so required. So job creation should not immediately mean government jobs. It means creating opportunities for people to use their skills and entrepreneurial spirit to be able to get onto that and earn something out of it. We create the capacity for it.
Ma'am, while we are here, you made a very interesting point about job opportunities does not necessarily translate to government jobs. I think this whole job creation discussion that happens, or rather goes around in our political discourse, I think is also a residue of the socialist era.
Absolutely.
So I think it is time for us now to introduce new vocabulary in a new economy like India, and rather than evaluating or assessing a government's economic performance on quote unquote job creation, we must rather consider earning opportunities, for lack of a better word.
Take the example of startups here.
Yes.
Why would you have a situation where in a month you have at least 2 startups becoming unicorns? Are they becoming unicorns sitting in the room for themselves? And with the status now becoming unicorn status, wouldn't they be creating jobs there? Wouldn't there be opportunities for more young to join? More number of startups young to join? Whether it is Swanidhi giving funds for street vendors, he is able to run his business better, means he has an impact on his immediate ecosystem. He himself probably employs one more person in addition. So the perspective with which you look at job, the word job need not just mean I get enrolled somewhere to get paid. You may still, campus recruitments have happened for jobs. People go join a particular large company for the job that it gives him. But that job is in a team, as a group, he is going to be working. So he joins a group of people there, and that is the job. All right. But when he does it in his own house, glamorously if it is a startup, You don't call him as a job because he employs himself. And when he employs a few more, so you're right, the perspective of job should not just be somebody giving you the work, but you can also create work. And that somebody can be anybody, not just the government.
Ma'am, on the price rise.
Price
before
rise.
we go to the last
See,
question.
the point about prices, some essential products which are not available in India, you have to import only, whether it is edible oil or whether it is your petroleum products. You import nearly 85% of it. India's own capacity to produce petroleum related products is hardly about 10-15%. So everything which happens outside is burdened on to you. Price goes up, it hits you. And not only that you bring that, but having brought it in, your refining cost, everything becomes a big addition. So that is one example of import dependent consumption. Similarly, edible oil. The kind of edible oil that India used to produce and which was sufficient for you, today is not sufficient. Whether it's your mustard oil, whether it is your groundnut oil, whether it is your til or coconut, all put together you don't nowadays, soya also, it's still not sufficient. You're still importing. And importing what? Soya oil or sunflower oil or large bulk quantities of palm oil. Now all this also have costs. They are not available at cost, at production cost. They are not available at the cost at which they manufacture it. They also would have markups. So when you're dependent on a import product, it will go up. The natural sequence would be for you all to ask me, but when the price comes down, do you reduce price? Most often it is the oil marketing companies which determine what price it should be. But there are times, like for instance in 2020, when the price of petroleum products came down, we saw an opportunity to pass some of the reduction in price, but also not completely, because we wanted to have that money come in because we could build roads better, quicker, speedier, infrastructure better, speedier, and so on. So not all times I concede that when the price came down, we passed it on. But when the price goes up, it is only to such extent that the government is able to cushion it. Beyond it, it goes up. Again, like the way Honorable Prime Minister did before Deepavali, he brought it down. But every rise in price because of a taxation is not just Government of India. Government of India takes a fixed amount. It's not an ad valorem tax. Whatever be the cost of fuel, Government of India gets only a certain fixed amount. But state governments take an ad valorem. So if 1 rupee increase, the rate at which they tax gives them more earning. If it increases by 2 rupees, they get much more. Whereas central government doesn't get it, it's a fixed amount. So the increase in fuel prices because of taxation happens because of both the center and the states. And when Prime Minister Modi, because one day before Deepavali when he announced, not only the central rate came down, but states, all BJP ruled states, immediately followed and reduced their share also. They brought down the rates. BJP governments reduced the price, and as a result, both central reduction and state reduction was passed on to the consumer. So the rate at which at the pump you were buying petrol in BJP ruled states came down considerably. And from then till today, they have foregone quite an amount, substantial amount of money. So to that extent, BJP governments were sensitive to the consumer's needs. Whereas there were other governments which said, no, we won't reduce. I've even got the data to show you between Deepavali and today how much they have earned, and they are sitting comfortably, not passing it on to the consumer, but they make the loudest noise. Hey, Prime Minister Modi, why are you not reducing the price? You should see the data. The hypocrisy of the opposition will be obvious to you. And I think you being where you are, among your friends, among your people, you should say, there is no competition. The burden on the consumer will have to be brought down is granted. We'll have to do, we will do. But having done it in November, and having all the BJP governments also follow suit, who's making the maximum noise? Those who did not reduce. I want this information to spread.
Good evening, ma'am. My name is Anubhav. I am a SRCC graduate and a civil service aspirant. Ma'am, my question is regarding wealth distribution. So we see that around 58% of the wealth of our country is held by 1%, and which affects the per capita income of an individual. The government is doing a lot for the lower strata people. So ma'am, do you have a time frame or something in mind that by what time or by what extent we can reduce this?
Reduce what?
Ma'am, the inequality in wealth distribution.
Reduce the inequality. Inequality reduction should be looked at, please sit down.
Thank you, ma'am.
Should be looked at as a way to make more people be able to earn more wealth. You should bring in capacity to make more people a lot more access resources through which they can generate more wealth. Yes, the gap being wide doesn't give you comfort. You want more people to be able to earn revenue. I'm only giving a momentary caution, that's not permanently in my mind. Momentary caution is the temptation which most leftists would have is to bring them down to level it. Bringing down is one story. But is it not a better positive story to lift more people to be able to go up somewhat so that the gap is narrowed? So the conversation should be to see how best we can have more people access resources and be able to have the skills to be able to earn for themselves much more and therefore bridge the gap.
Thank you so much, everybody, for your interest. Madam, on behalf of the Bharatiya Janata Yuva Morcha, and a lot of young people who will definitely benefit out of this conversation, I thank you for taking the time out and giving us this very rare opportunity to sit in a very small group of 30-35 people and ask our questions on behalf of Young India to the Finance Minister herself. So, Madam, thank you so much, and I'm grateful, and you have given a great start to BJYM policy dialogues. I hope that this will be a platform which a lot of young people will make use of to better understand the policy initiatives and its tremendous impact in transforming lives of the people under the leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister. Thank you so much, ma'am. Namaste.
भारतीय जनता युवा मोर्चा द्वारा आयोजित बीजेवाईएम पॉलिसी डायलॉग्स के पहले सत्र में माननीय केंद्रीय मंत्री निर्मला सीतारमन जी द्वारा हम लोगों के लिए इतना समय दिया गया, उसके लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद मैम। और आज जो आपने एक अपने राजनीतिक सफ़र के बारे में हमें बताया, तो जो थकान कुछ हमें थी भी, उस एक नई ऊर्जा के साथ हम फिर से संगठन के कार्य में लगेंगे और दिन रात परिश्रम के साथ लगेंगे, ऐसा हम आपको आश्वासन देते हैं। एक नई ऊर्जा के साथ हम आज जा रहे हैं। दूसरा, आपने बताया कि कैसे नरेंद्र मोदी जी के नेतृत्व में भारत में स्थायी बदलाव जो कि अर्थव्यवस्था में भी और कैसे शासन भारत में अब चल रहा है, कैसे स्थायी बदलाव गवर्नेंस में आए हैं, वो आपने हमें बताया, उसके लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। मैं धन्यवाद करना चाहूँगा हमारे राष्ट्रीय अध्यक्ष तेजस्वी सूर्या जी का, जिन्होंने एक इतने अच्छे कार्यक्रम का आयोजन हम सबके लिए किया है, और वरुण जावेरी जी का, जो पॉलिसी रिसर्च के हमारे इंचार्ज हैं। थैंक यू।